you. If you're tuning in right now live, just so that you know, this is a spotlight focus on on a specific specialty of Talk to the Entities. If you're interested in more entity awareness, we have had maybe five topics that have preceded this one. You can find them all on the Talk to the Entities YouTube. With other amazing Talk to the Entities facilitators. And today I am joined by beautiful Monica and Allison, and we are going to open the doorways to infinite perception of the beautiful natural spirits that accompany us on this earth. Um, I feel like this is a fun topic of Talk to the Entities. It's one of the lighter, easier, I think more easy to enjoy topics because when we're talking about entities, we're dealing with all entities, and that's what's so special about Talk to the Entities. Um, so, welcome. So, when I say nature spirits, like what do I mean? We mean beings, potentially undefined energies, consciousness that accompanies nature, that is part of the earth, and that most of us shut out or stop seeing pretty early on in life, unless you're a weirdo like us and you have consciously cultivated the willingness, the interest, and the ability and capacity to participate with the spirit world. So, where would you guys, Allison and Monica, any fun stories, anywhere you'd like to start? Really, it's an open playing field here. Because I want to, well, I will say this. If you're listening to this now, you might find your mind wanting to define this topic or get us to define this for you or make it normal. That's not this topic. What would it take to, what would it take to allow these beings to contribute to a less controlled, less linear, less normal reality? Mhm. And everything that doesn't allow that, let's destroy it, uncreate it.
Yeah.
Cool. So again, Allison and Monica, where would you guys like to start? Any cool stories, any fun ticks and tricks and tips? Anywhere we can go, anywhere.
Well, I can start with I really, years and years ago, I heard about the consciousness of the earth, and it seemed like this fantastical fairy tale that sounded really fun, but I wasn't really sure what that meant or like how to engage with that or if that was even real, if it was just too fun to be true. And then I was sent out into the garden to cut back a whole bunch of plants. And after hearing about the consciousness of the earth, I was kind of worried. Like, now I'm supposed to go cut all of these plants. Will it hurt? I don't know. I haven't been a plant. What do I do? And so then I just went out and I asked for all of the consciousness of the earth to show me what to do, to show me where to cut and where not to cut. And then I just was like, okay, I'm just going to go for it. And just every once in a while, my hands would just stop. And then I would kind of dig around and see what I was about to cut through. And every time I was about to cut through something that I shouldn't have. And that for me was just so exciting that I asked and I got information. And the way that that showed up encouraged me to be asking more. And so then I just kind of went out into the garden and started asking crazy questions, all sorts of questions, any question. And and over time, I started to trust more and more and more all of the many, many different ways that I was receiving that information. It wasn't like, some like trumpet and like, this is what you should do,
Right.
it was much more subtle, but I started to really recognize that subtlety that wasn't subtle. Like I could ignore it, but if I didn't ignore it, it would open up this this like tingling in my body, this sense of joy that is what I began to follow as I would ask to engage with the spirits of the earth. And since then, I would say that the spirits of the earth have become some of my best friends, you know?
Yeah.
And and so that's kind of where my journey started. And then I later came across Talk to the Entities and was just so excited and like encouraged by the spirits of the earth to know that you can talk to entities. I had been doing it in different ways, and then with Talk to the Entities, there was just a really clear way to engage, you know, and so that's just kind of developed and grown over the years.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Totally. I know I'm kind of, well, when I was younger, like I wished and hoped that this was real
Yeah,
because I was kind of like uh, what was it, the Dark Crystal and the Labyrinth kind of girl movies.
totally.
And so I was like, yes. And that was kind of my happy place because when you go hang out with your, no offense, parents, like your parents, or you go to soccer practice, it's not quite as magical. You guys are magical, but like that world, and I would play in the forest a lot with my brothers. We'd play like, or just with bugs, like bugs and dirt and everything. And it was just so funny and it just felt good there. And as you grow up, maybe you don't play with bugs and dirt as much. I guess I didn't in college. That'd been probably. Um, but I was like, that thing never quite died of like, that fantasy feels so good. What is that? And so flash forward to Talk to the Entities, the
Mm.
class that I took that was like, I remember looking down the list of Access Consciousness classes when I finally found that and saw Talk to the Entities. And I was like, wait, this is real? This lady's charging money? That means it's real. Like I'm paying. My reasons and justifications.
I
And
love Allison's logic matrix. She's charging money, that means it must be real. I love that. They give me a whole new insight into how money works. That's like so cool.
yeah. And so then, finding out about all the tools of Talk to the Entities and starting to use those. When I first started to tap into the nature spirits, they're in the manual. I'm like, yes, I can talk to you guys. I knew I was talking to you, but this is like my knowing started to grow. And I didn't really have to, I started to notice it didn't matter if I was super specific or not, because I couldn't, like, at the beginning, didn't know what I know now,
Mm,
but they appreciated the presence. So if you're really present with any energy you're communicating with or talking with, that opens a whole new door to whatever you're going to explore with the nature spirits, especially because how do you define the undefinable? Or really, like, you're talking to a fairy and all you've seen is Peter Pan. A lot of them I found don't mind if you have that picture in your head as long as you're still open to what else is possible. And if you need to start there, that's okay. They like look at my brain. I can talk to them, and if I can talk to them, anyone can. I kind of think in cartoon anyway. But just yesterday, um, I kind of had I was just like funky. We had just had a huge weekend of classes and I was like, bleh. I'm like, I'm gonna go to the mountains. So I went to the mountains where I usually like there's so many nature spirits there. I had this idea that if I just go there, it's gonna be beautiful and they're gonna save my life and yay. And I got there and I was walking my dog through the forest and I was still cranky. I'm like, guys, make me feel better. And they're like, "Ugh," but I was in such a point of view. Finally it got through, like, touch the rock. I'm like, what? And
totally.
so there's these boulders. I live in
Yeah.
Colorado, right by the Rocky Mountains, and there's these huge stones. And if you've never met like the nature spirits of stones or whatever you want to call it, rocks, um, or they just met the energy of a big stone. For some reason, they're like, go to the Rocky Mountains because almost can't deny it. It's like, whoa, what is this energy? Anyway, I was like, okay, walking down the trail, found a big rock. It's like, hey. And so I just put my hands on it and it started working on me and I started working on it, AKA just receiving, just allowing the energy to melt in. And after that, I felt so good. And it's as if like everything turned from gray and people were annoying and people were around even to kind of hypercolor, happy, cleaner air for me. It's just like it was a weird, an amazing shift of perception and also just change and like actual change. And then walking out of there, my dog actually like found this natural spring with all these little like gold dusts. It kind of might have been pyrite, but still, it was just this really cool thing. I'm gonna go back and check to see if it's actually gold. But there was all this gold in this spring. I'm like, wow, just this huge magical like experience from blah, engaging with the nature spirits too. Yes, what
Yeah.
else is magical?
And I love that story. And thank you so much for sharing that. And that was a huge impetus and inspiration for me, for I had received like so much therapy contribution from spirits, but a lot from nature spirits.
Yeah.
And it's like I was, I'm going to tell this story because I know this is the journey that a lot of people go on, where you're born, you have all this perception, and then then you progress into letting go of or disconnecting from what isn't normal. Because other people aren't talking about it. It's like your parents don't teach you how to talk to entities or that the earth is conscious. Most of our parents don't teach us that. Of course, there's the odd parent. Um, and so we become adults in this world that's disconnected and devoid of the energy and the beings, the activity, the biomatter of consciousness, essentially, that so many of us crave. Or if you're here, is that an energy that you crave? Um, and there is so much more noise now on Earth than ever before. And uh, one of the words that both of you guys used in your stories was presence. And if you imagine like 500 years ago, it was a really different, the Earth was a different space. It was just so much more quiet. It would be almost impossible not to acknowledge the presence of nature spirits. Now it's so easy to acknowledge them, one, because their natural habitat is disrupted, and two, because there's just so much noise. So, first tool and trick and tip for increasing awareness or sensitivity to nature spirits, if you're interested, is to have awareness of where you're using your mind or your logic as a filter or a control mechanism that might be influencing or affecting your ability to perceive and be present with energies that might not be definable by your mind.
Yeah.
And this is where entities for me become a huge asset and gift, because entities have taught me how to change my point of view, which I know isn't where what a lot of people are trying to do. They're trying to find the right point of view, not become more flexible in their point of view, but especially to play with nature spirits, you can't be a super heady control freak. Like, you gotta be pretty connected to energy. And that's the gift that talking to entities has been for me. It's enabled me and prioritized energetic sensitivity in a world that really isn't prioritizing energetic sensitivity. It's prioritizing the mind in a big, big, big way. Um,
It's also, there's so much where we're taught to fit into the mold and to, be
totally.
like everybody else. And I, I, what I love so much about talk to the entities and talking with the nature spirits is that it opens up my curiosity and my sense of wonder and this sense of like, please show me something that you know. What do you know? And getting to ask that of non-people is really exciting to me. And it requires that I relax and be willing to be open to different awareness without having to immediately classify it and categorize it and put it in a box and put it on the shelf and
Or
say,
shut it
okay,
out. or shut it
Yeah.
out because someone's going to call you crazy if you talk about it or see it or experience it. So anyone listening to this at any point where it's like you saw something, you expressed something, and someone called you crazy or told you were wrong or told you were making it up, and they're forever ended your connection to magic. Okay, so who's more right? Who told you were wrong or your perception? So it's like destroy and uncreate everybody else's point of view about what is real and true. Woo! Right, wrong, good, bad, all 100, pod, poc, shorts, povads, boys, BCs, creations, and beyonds. Actually, this is like a really interesting, this conversation more than any of the other uh talk to entities, specialty spotlights, is really confronting, and I don't, I mean, like, let's not be scared by the word confronting, but it's really confronting reality. And I think that that's because the nature spirits are contributing so much to this conversation that it really is adding this question mark around where people might have put up a lot of barriers due to, number one, not being empowered to trust their own awareness.
Mm.
Like any of you guys out there who were discouraged or actively penalized to the point where you don't even trust your own knowing anymore. And that's the state that a lot of people find themselves in, especially as adults. You are living in a world of I don't know rather than a world of, ooh, I see those sparkles. What's down that pathway of possibility? Are you willing to play? And this is really the choice that we can make. And I presume most people listening to this are adults. Of course, the children have a lot more keys, but children are stupid, so people don't listen to children. Children don't know about reality. Children still have the flexibility to see magic in the trees. But adults, if you see magic, then what? Well, obviously you're crazy. So, so what is it that all of you guys know that you've been pretending not to know or denying that you know? And the really important question here today is, do you want it? And if you do, what's the work you're going to have to choose to give yourself the confidence to know what you know? I can't know. I can't see through your eyes. Allison and Monica can't be you for you. It's the freedom that you have to choose because everything is possible, literally. Like infinite possibility is the only real thing. So if infinite possibility is the only real thing, and that's true, like I'm not just making this up, infinite possibility is the only real thing. Even science says so. What if the whispers you've heard in the water and the glitter in the trees and the rock beings and the voices you hear in the earth, what if you're not making that up? And if you were willing to let it in, what could that add to living?
Truly. I mean, Allison was mentioning this before, and I have so many experiences too of kind of being in a funk and then going out and just saying hello to the earth, saying hello to the plants, and just that begins an exchange. And it's so cool because it's not like you have to figure out the right thing to say. You don't have to, like, bow in a certain way on a certain day in order to have
Weekend just for
access.
fun.
Yeah, you just go and you say hello, and then noticing, for me, there's been a lot with my body where my body will feel kind of meh, and then I go and I say hello to the nature spirits, and immediately they begin to contribute to my body in such a delightful way that it just opens up my gratitude, and it makes it like impossible to deny it,
So
you know
let me stop you for a quick second because you said something really important that might be easy to miss. What Alice or what Monica just said is she just says hello. That's
Mm.
it. That's the significance of where you start. That's the sum total of this rocket science. Just say hi. Start there, right? Like just hi. Now, if you're like a real baby, like a real newbie when it comes to acknowledging your knowing, like being open to spirit communication, awesome. We got you. That's what all of Talk to Entities is for. If you know that you're really interested in nature spirits, or you know that like you're aware, but you've been making it wrong and you just don't really know how to get into it in a like way that is practical and works, that's where we have the nature spirit class. Allison and Monica facilitate the Talk to the Entity Spirits of the Earth class. It exists in the Talk to the Entity shop, but really we're giving you tools. Like they've both said this multiple times. Say hello. Imagine if you were a nature spirit, and how would you feel about around people? So you can imagine if you have one person who's like, hey, I don't totally trust my knowing, but I know you're there. Hey, right? It becomes this cool energy flow. And that's what we're talking about, energy and the beings that live on this planet with us. And that's a fact. It's like, I mean, when I say that's a fact, I don't know whose fact I'm talking about, but it's like, it's fact for me. We're not alone. There is, and if you know this, know it. Then what do you do with that knowing in a world full of disbelievers or people who are even violently against that kind of sensitivity and consciousness? Because that does exist. There's a lot of people who will aggressively attack you if you say something that they don't agree with or believe in. Okay, are they allowed to have their point of view? Are you allowed to have your point of view? And do you allow yourself to have your point of view?
I love that. I found another tip or tool for that even is like I seem to get away with so much about talking about nature spirits around, I took talk to the entities and I was have been so excited. And anytime I talk to anyone after this conversation or after my first classes, I'm like, fairies are real, look, they're over there. And my friends and family and everything, I just used humor. And I think they already thought I was crazy anyway. So I kind of had that caveat. But, to this day, I just talked to my brother the other day too. He's like, Al, are the fairies still real? I'm like, yeah. He's like, ah. He just thinks it's the funniest thing. So even just like, I don't know, like allowing, like you said, allowing them to have their point of view, but also maybe like having your point of view and how can you allow it to sink in? It doesn't really matter if they receive it or not. Uh, but
Yeah,
it's just so fun to see. I think it's fun to see what I can say that will kind of get a rise and allow them to laugh or at least open a door into this just as an invitation, not as a I'm right, you're wrong kind of thing.
beautiful.
Yeah. I feel like I had something else to say, but my brain keeps getting swiped
Well,
away.
it's actually it's interesting talking to you guys about this and having you guys here for this because this can go into this feels like it's going into very advanced places. So don't do that. Bad girls. Keep it bite sized, keep it newbie. And if you do, yeah, there you go. So if you do want more of this energy, this possibility, do check out the Spirits of the Earth classes or not. I mean, this is just my inspiration has always been to create a place where people who are looking for this can go. Like Alison said, she'd always been aware, but didn't really have education around it or didn't know who to talk to about it. And then she saw Talk to Entities. She was like, oh, yes. And it's it's like I have been spirit gifted all of my life, but I'm also gifted with the capacity to articulate and to talk about things that are really weird and challenging, but make it practical. In my opinion, I think Talk to the Entities is the most practical spirit system I've ever heard of.
Absolutely.
But we have to include nature spirits because they are real and that does exist. We do a lot of different, the entity kingdom is vast and really the specialties are just the tip of the iceberg. But really, it's just about, no, it's not just about, it can be a inclusive possibility.
Mhm.
Would you like to live in a world where nature spirits and nature are respected, are valued, are a gift that isn't used and abused? What impact can you have through your own consciousness? And this is where working with nature spirits becomes very exciting to me because I was always very reactive to what I saw going on with the earth and people's choices. I was so reactive as a teenager, so angry. And coupled with feeling completely impotent to really have any real impact or do anything to contribute to the magical, infinitely gifting planet that we get to play on. And then I started tuning into nature spirits, and I realized that if I cooperate with them, how do you cooperate with nature spirits? First step, say hello, right? There's many steps past that, but that's the first step, say hello. If I cooperated with nature spirits, there is this incredible force and source of energy that will play, that will participate, and that is effective. I grew up in Southern California. I grew up on the beach, and I noticed throughout my, growing up there and into my early 20s that the beach was getting more and more polluted. There was more garbage on the beach, more disruption of the natural environment as I got older. And I used to be so reactive about it. And then one day I saw this sparkle in the water. And I could have been like, oh, that was just the sun flashing in my eyes. And I went, wait, hi, right? Say hello, hi. And it was this download or this rush of energy that I perceived. And learned later that that's how they communicate with me. It's a flow of energy. Nature spirits don't talk like people. They don't have minds. So there's a lot of energy that occurs. There was this flow of energy, and they said, talk to me. And I was like, well, what do we do? And they say, well, what can we contribute? And I was like, yeah, what can we contribute? And it became a cooperation of energy between us rather than the I'm so upset and I'm really disconnected from the earth based on my point of view. 2 weeks later, I went to the same beach and it was so different. It was so different. And at first I wanted to completely disregard. I was like, oh no, that wasn't, I'm just making it up. I was imagining it. And one of the first rules of consciousness that I was taught was acknowledgement creates, if you don't acknowledge what you've created, you'll start destroying it. And I knew at some point I had to start to claim and own what I knew, or I was just going to keep suffering the pain of
What wasn't true.
what wasn't true.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
So, what are the gifts that are being given that we might not be able to control, predict, or fit into a currently or already known reality? Are you willing to keep growing into new possibilities? And I wonder who and what could and would play with you if you said hello.
Yay!
Please check out the Nature Spirits page on the Talk to the Entities website. It's in the specialty section. Check out Alison and Monica. Please visit the other Talk to the Entities facilitators who are being a source and a force for an entity positive world. We love you. We can't wait to play with you. How does it get better than this? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.